Hello and welcome to Where to Go. I'm James Atkinson, Senior Brand Manager at DK Eyewitness.
And I'm Lucy Richards, Senior Editor at DK Eyewitness.
And welcome to Where to Go, where every fortnight we find out more about the world's favourite travel destinations with the people who know those places best. And today, where are we going, Lucy?
Well, we're actually not going too far. We're going to Lyon in France, James, which is
Lovely.
Very welcome because I know you and I are both in London where there's currently sort of a weird thunderstorm and then immediately after sunshine. So I think we need to be sipping wine in Lyon and in some excellent company.
Yeah, we need some continental sunshine for sure. It's weird. It's like 5 minutes of sun, 5 minutes of rain, 5 minutes of thunder.
Yes.
Listener, if you hear some, we apologise. You can just get an impression of how grimy a day it is in London today. So brilliant to be heading over to Lyon. As you say, sipping some wine, enjoying the sights, being in the south of France.
Yeah.
And have you ever actually been to Lyon?
I haven't.
Before?
I'm ashamed to say I've not. And I have to say all of France, I don't feel particularly well travelled in at all. But you, James, I believe your mum was a French teacher, so I feel like you're going to be much more familiar with Lyon than I am.
My mum was a French teacher. shout out Hillary.
Big up Hillary.
She does listen, actually. But she was a French teacher, and funnily enough, she spent her and my dad spent some time living near Lyon in their 20s long before I was born. However, ridiculously, I've never been to Lyon myself. So even though this is a place where I should have been, I actually haven't.
Well, I think once you've listened to this and spoken to our expert, then you need to take Hillary on a trip to relive her 20s.
Yeah, we need to go down memory lane for sure. There are lots of stories because she was very much in wine country, and she was working as an English teacher, but she was also taking rugby tours around the region, so acting as an English translator. And there's a lot of stories about a lot of drunken 70s stories.
Well, Hillary sounds like an absolute legend. Maybe we should get Hillary on the podcast for a
absolutely not. No way. Sorry, Mum, I love you, but
Hillary, I'll hook you up, don't worry.
But we need to, it'd be great to relive some of that. But I have travelled across the south of France. I did go cycling across Canal Midi last October or so, and it was brilliant to be back in France. I love the kind of south. It's very different.
Yes.
There's a mixture of cities, but also really rural areas. Lots of dusty sun, and obviously a load of wine. So I think we're going to hear quite a lot of that.
Yes. So James, tell us, who have we got on the podcast this week?
So Anna Richards is a Cornish travel, outdoor and sustainability writer based in Lyon who has written for Atlas Obscura, The Independent, Suitcase, The Telegraph and many other publications.
Welcome, Anna.
Hello.
Welcome, Anna. Hello. It's brilliant to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. Brilliant to be here.
Welcome, Anna. So we're going to kick off by getting to know Anna a bit more and what made Anna move to Lyon, followed by hearing all her insider tips and recommendations, and then we'll finish off in our usual way by looking at Lyon in the present day.
So, Anna, how did you end up living in Lyon?
It was quite a combination of factors. I think that a lot of it was brought on by a kind of pandemic-induced life crisis.
Okay. Yes.
So a lot of that was kind of a lot of boredom. I was out of the UK traveling when the pandemic hit, and I think that I was quite resentful about being, stuck in one place again. I lived in France for 6 months in my Erasmus year. I did French at university and spent half the year in France. Mm-hmm. And I was probably about an hour from Lyon in the middle of the countryside. So my housemate and I used to hitchhike into Lyon every weekend and go out and probably get royally pissed and, do nothing cultural whatsoever. But I had a really good time. So fond memories of it. And I also lost somebody incredibly close to me over the summer, and I needed just a huge change of scene. So I ended up just sort of hauling over my entire life, quitting my job and running away to Lyon. But it's been a good decision so far.
And what part specifically of Lyon do you live in, Anna? And sort of how does that where does that sit in the city exactly?
So if you talk to anybody who's from Lyon, they will tell you that where I live isn't really even in Lyon, although it's on the metro line. So I firmly maintain that it is. It's a little place called Vaux-en-Velin-le-Soie, which La Soie basically means silk, and it's the old silk factory quarter, which sounds probably cooler than it is. Actually, it's a very modern area at the moment. So I don't know, it's kind of a bit like if you think of like Canary Wharf with a few old silk factories dotted around.
Gotcha.
But Lyon's like, it's obviously it's a lot more compact than somewhere like London. So, I mean, I get on the metro and within 15 minutes, I'm right in the city centre, or on my bike, it's like 20, 25 minutes. So I'd say that qualifies as Lyon. But, you know, you speak to anyone who's from here, and if they can't get there, you know, 5-10 minutes by foot, it's not the city.
What do you love most about Lyon? What's kind of, since you've moved there, what's really kind of captured your sort of imagination?
Well, obviously, you know, getting pissed in Lyon is still absolutely delightful. But that's probably something that you can do in a lot of cities around the world. No, I think for me, it's kind of a combination of where Lyon's located and how accessible it is. I mean, being Cornish, I think that every time I've moved to a city, I've kind of liked to almost sort of observe a city from the sidelines a little bit. So I love to be able to, you know, dip in and go out, and I love, you know, all of the sort of the great social life that a city can bring, and, you know, all of the great restaurants and theatres and things like that. But I actually seem to have a kind of pathological fear of being stuck on the tube or like just boxed into a city too much. So the great thing about Lyon is that you can cycle everywhere. The cycle lanes are absolutely fantastic. Nowhere is more than half an hour by bike. So, you know, if you're bad at planning your social calendar like I am, you can have, you know, plans in one part of the city in the morning, another part in the afternoon, and another part in the evening. And obviously you can't really do that in London or Paris. And the other thing is the location. I mean, there's Beaujolais wine region is half an hour by car. The Alps are an hour and a half, 2 hours drive. Paris is 2 hours on the train. You know, the coast is only sort of 2.5 hours by train as well. So it's this really kind of special location where you've got everything on your doorstep, and you've got an abundance of really cool, really beautiful, you know, outdoor spaces as well.
You didn't even mention food there as well, which I feel like is the thing that Lyon's most famous for, right? Okay, we'll come to that.
Too much to say.
And obviously, you're a big sustainability writer. I know that you kind of then wanted to focus on settling yourself in Lyon, but do you go back to Cornwall much out of interest, or have you sort of just firmly based yourself in Lyon?
I have been back a few times, and that's mostly because I've hit the age where all of my friends are getting married. So I'm sort of dragged back for wedding after wedding and hen party after hen party, and that can be a bit difficult actually, because I've sort of told myself that where possible I won't fly in Europe, so it's an absolute odyssey by train to go back to Cornwall. So yeah, you do end up having to, you know, try to be a bit strategic about it. When I'm on the train, I'm usually sort of working and typing frantically. So yeah, I've been back twice since I moved, and I'll be back again in a month or two because more weddings.
But I guess, like, you talked about the location a bit, and in Lyon you really are kind of almost like in a dot in the center of Europe in a way. You know, it must be quite easy. It must make your job as a travel writer that tiny bit easier to go, you know, get the train to other places rather than having to fly.
Yeah, 100%. And it's actually a revelation coming from somewhere like Cornwall as well, where, you know, driving out of Cornwall takes a good hour and a half from where I grew up, and an hour and a half, well, 2 hours really on the bus from here, and I'm in Switzerland, and it costs me €4 to get the bus to Switzerland. Wow. So that's the location is an absolute winner.
I mean, Lucy, I think you're sold, right? As you always
Anna, I'm coming to stay.
Welcome anytime.
It did not take long. Okay, well, that leads us into like finding out a little bit about the best things to do in Lyon.
So Anna, we're going to start the section off with a quick fire tour of the city. So James and I are going to name a few categories, and then you have to suggest one thing to do. So, are you ready?
I'm just going to say just before we start that there's been murmurings that we've been a bit soft recently, and guests have been like naming multiple things to do. We're going to stay soft because it's not that kind of podcast really. But yeah, try to stick where possible to just one thing to do.
Okay.
So here we go. So Anna, your favourite thing to see in Lyon?
I think it's going to have to be the street art. Lyon's got really, really unique street art. I mean, there's loads of cities in the world that have got, absolutely sort of cracking street art at the moment, but Lyon's is incredibly unique. It's one thing that I loved the very first time that I came to Lyon, and my jaw sort of still kind of falls to the ground every time I'm looking at these things. These massive wall frescoes, which are called trompe-l'œil, which is literally it's like an optical illusion. It's like an eye tracker, and basically it's the walls of buildings that have been painted to look like a street scene, but it's usually something to do with Lyon's history, or like sort of the history of that particular area. So you've got a massive one in the old silk weaving district, which has basically, it's just got this sort of this huge building that's painted like a street scene, and until you come up really close, you wouldn't even know that it was just paint. And then there's other ones that have got kind of, you'd look at it and you'd be like, that street looks a bit funny, and it's because as you come up closer, the building's been painted to look like a scene from, say, the 1800s, with sort of famous old people that used to live in Lyon, and I think I can't even hazard a guess how many there are in Lyon at the moment. I want to say that there's a good sort of 80 to 100 dotted around the city in different places.
Wow,
but yeah, they're really cool.
I've just done a quick Google search just to look at some of these, and they're fantastic. It's quite amazing, actually. Like, really, I would be quite stuck if I didn't know these were not like. I'd just assume they were photographs.
Yeah, they're really detailed. Yeah, and it's just, I mean, the street art. I mean, you've also got you've got painted staircase and stuff that kind of they make you think of what, like Lapa and Rio or something, where you're just kind of going around the corner, and then you've got this brightly coloured painted staircase, and yeah, so the street art is really cool. So that's something that I always like to show people when they come to visit.
Cool.
Great
that is a brilliant answer. Okay, so next up, your favourite thing to drink.
It has to be wine.
I mean, ask a silly question. That is.
I'm in the home of Côte de Rhône. Yeah. There's a lot of great wines here. Beaujolais, as I think I said earlier, is a half an hour drive away. And there's an amazing bar that I go to far too frequently, where they've actually got loads of different wines on tap. And basically you're encouraged to mix your drinks, which is quite novel. Oh. And they have this wine menu where they put kind of little picture next to each type of wine, like, I don't know, chocolate. I was going to say grapes, but that would be stupid because obviously all wine is grapes, like apricot, strawberry, whatever. So you'll just kind of point at the different wine taps and you'll say, yeah, okay, let's try mixing chocolate and strawberry notes. And they blend these wines, which are almost entirely French, a lot from the area. And you just taste a load of different ones, basically. So yeah, wine.
Have you
definitely.
got,
wow.
I mean, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. Have you got a favourite combination?
I've tried many combinations, perhaps. I don't have a favourite yet, so that's just a reason for me to go back again, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so Anna, your favourite thing to eat, and if you want, you can name a specific place as well that you would eat that thing at.
Again, I think I'm going to be really sort of really unimaginative here, and it's going to be cheese, but I will be specific about the type of cheese as well.
Okay.
There's a cheese that's actually from Lyon that's called Arôme de Lyon, and it's rolled in kind of dry grape skins, but then it's really kind of like pungent and also creamy at the same time. And you can go down to this enormous market called Quai Saint-Antoine, which is it's definitely on Sundays. I think it might be on Fridays and Saturdays as well, but it's usually only a Sunday that I make it there. And you can get this cheese arôme de Lyon. I think it's about €2 a cheese, and I easily eat it in one sitting, but it's really, really good.
I mean, that
good answer. Very happy.
Sounds perfect. And your favorite day activity? So something like, if you'd spend a perfect day, what would it be doing?
Do I have people visiting me, or is this just kind of my day activity? Just
it's your day. It's your day. It depends what your It's all yours. I really like there's an amazing swimming pool here, and it's got the most fantastic view. So I'd say that's something that I'll quite often do on a really nice day. It's right by the banks of the river, so as you're swimming along, you can see the massive the cathedral, the big old basilica, Fourvière, right on the top of the hill. I just think it's really special to be able to sort of just go swimming literally on the banks of the river and see one of the most impressive sights in the city towering up over you, and particularly nice in the winter as it's getting dark and the cathedral's just all kind of lit up above the pool.
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
that sounds incredible.
Yeah, that sounds really nice.
Great answer. And then finally, Anna, your favourite museum or gallery?
I mean, the Bazaar is very impressive. It's a gorgeous big old building. It's got a really cool sculpture section. I think it's partly the building itself that I love. And it's also got the most incredible kind of walled garden in the middle, in the inside. So after you've gone around all of the sculptures and paintings and temporary exhibitions, you can go out into this really gorgeous walled garden, which is in the middle of the city, but it's an absolute oasis. So yeah, probably the Bazaar, but there's a lot of good museums and galleries in Lyon.
And that's the end of the quickfire round. You've done a fantastic job of keeping. You kept to one answer every single time. That's. But
I did waffle a bit.
I almost think that's the first. No, you were brilliant. And so you've given our listeners your quickfire sort of guide to the city. But imagine you're going back to Cornwall. You're on one of your hen do's, and someone goes, "I don't actually know anything about Lyon. Tell me about it." How would you kind of introduce it? How would you sell it to them?
Better than Paris.
Okay, that's a big claim.
How would I say it to them? So I think the thing that I always say to people about Lyon is it's visually it's really gorgeous. Basically, you've got two rivers that kind of merge in the city centre. So when you climb up to Fourvière, which is the cathedral up the top of the hill, and you look down on the city, you can see that the city centre is it's almost like an island. It's called Presqu'île as well. And I think that's quite special and unique. Like, there's not a lot of cities that have sort of these two kind of massive rivers, and that tends to be the prettiest part of the city. So it's kind of like Lyon's got double that. Other than that, I would say it's a great foodie city, and my friends like me mostly tend to travel guided by their stomachs.
We do on this podcast quite a lot.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, Lyon is often described as the gastronomic capital of France, and it just means that you've got this incredible array of restaurants, markets, wine bars. I feel like the food and drink alone would attract a lot of people to come here.
And with the food and drink then, is it sort of mainly fine dining, or is it then sort of, is there like street food? Is it more affordable? Like what is the food scene like, would you say, Hannah?
There's a lot of everything, I guess, as there kind of is in any big city. I mean, there are some incredibly high-end restaurants. So Paul Bocuse, the really famous French chef, he was based in Lyon. There's a few of his restaurants dotted around, kind of from the really, really high-end. I think it's only 2 Michelin star now, because there was some like great uproar about it losing one of its 3 stars. Paul Bocuse Bocuse restaurant, and then some slightly kind of slightly lower level Paul Bocuse restaurants as well. So I mean, you can you can really splash out on meals in Lyon, but then you can also eat out really, really affordably as well. I mean, there's massive markets. You've got street food joints. There's a little place called La Commune, which has opened over in kind of Lyon's in sort of eastern Lyon, and that reminds me of Borough Market, and that's kind of where I go which very rarely happens, but when I do get a little bit sick of, just kind of like an overload of cheese and kind of like that sort of traditional French cuisine, you can go to La Commune, and then you've got things like, you've got Sri Lankan, you've got bao, you've got sort of kind of a whole kind of range of world cuisines there. The traditional Lyonnaise restaurants are called bouchons, which no one kind of knows whether a bouchon can basically be, it can be like a cork that goes in the top of a wine bottle, or it can be a traffic jam. And no one really knows whether the bouchons are named after the traffic jams or the wine corks, because Lyon did used to have really, really bad traffic. But they're the kind of traditional Lyonnaise restaurants. They're very meat heavy. I don't eat meat, so they're not so much my thing, and they're also kind of a lot of offal, so kind of tripe, pig liver, things like that. They're fun as kind of a one-off experience. They're not somewhere that obviously as a vegetarian I go very often, because the offerings are a little limited for me. But yeah, that's something that Lyon's very known for as well.
So yeah, quite an array really of restaurant options. Because I always think of when I think of Lyon with food, I think of it as being the Paul Bocuse, like traditional French kind of foodie capital, lots of traditional French cuisine. But it's really interesting to hear that there's way more than that, and actually that there's options for vegetarians around as well. And that can be quite tricky in the south of France.
I think obviously Lyon being sort of really a really massive city, and I mean the Green Party's in power in Lyon as well, so maybe that's kind of given like the sort of like the veggie dining scene a big boost. But no, I eat very well as a veggie in Lyon.
It's great to hear. And are there any like sort of hidden gems in Lyon that you'd be willing to share with us?
Many, and to be fair, I think all I do for work is share hidden gems in Lyon. So I'm probably really annoying everybody that lives here. I mean, I think that Lyon's bookshop scene is incredibly good. There's a lot of really good bookshop cafes, and one day I did just kind of like my own little tour of just going around to all of the different bookshop cafes in the city, and there's so many. They're absolutely fantastic. I'd say it was a really good way of spending a day. So there's a lot of hidden places in the triboules, which are the old covered passageways in Lyon. And one of them's got kind of like a really gourmet food court in it, and I wouldn't say it's like massively unknown and under the radar, but it's definitely something that I didn't discover for a little while when I first got to Lyon. So it's called Food Triboule, and you can eat incredibly well kind of in the old covered passageways. The other thing I would say is Lyon's actually got a really good craft beer scene. Like, it's really well known for wine, but there's a lot of great craft breweries popping up. There's one that's just opened called Brasserie de Montchat, which does fantastic craft beer, which is virtually as strong as wine as well. But they've got really cute little beer garden. You kind of you see sort of them making everything there on site. I guess one of the hidden gems is obviously go to Lyon for the wine, because it's fantastic. But make sure you go to some of the breweries as well. So
stay for a beer.
Cool.
Yeah, very cool.
And then when we've gorged ourselves and we've
drank
all the wine and all the beer, where would we go, Anna, sort of outside of Lyon? What else is sort of around if we wanted to head out of the city?
Well, the problem is the first bit you get to is the wine region. So, you'll gorge yourself and drink all the wine and drink all the beer, and then you're going to sort of wind up in Beaujolais, which is obviously, vineyards galore, but really gorgeous. So really worth a look. I'd probably recommend going to the national parks that are just on the edge of the Alps. I mean, it depends enormously what time of year you're visiting Lyon. If you're coming in the middle of winter, then it's probably worth sort of actually going, kind of right up into the Alps and going, skiing or snowshoeing or whatever. But there's some really, really gorgeous national parks very close to Lyon. Two that I really like. One's called Chartreuse and one's called Vercors. And yeah, to be honest, great at any time of year because you can ski in either of them. They're not going to be, the most amazing piece you've ever skied in your life, but you can ski there. The summer hiking's really good. Chartreuse has got this crazy, enormous old monastery where, and I'm returning to booze again here, which is a bit of a theme, but you've probably heard of Chartreuse. I mean, it's France.
Yeah.
What do we expect? The Chartreuse, the liquor is it's this bright green, lethal liquor that's used as a kind of digestif, and it's brewed by monks in this monastery in the heart of the national park. And I think from what I've read, there's only 2 monks in the world that know how to brew Chartreuse, and they just have this secret little recipe that then gets sold all over the country, and I think in other countries too.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yes. As a side note, my grandma, her Christmas digestive was always Chartreuse. It's a very vibrant green.
Yeah, like Wicked Witch of the West kind of green.
That's right. That's exactly it, isn't it? That proper, wicked green. So you just made me think. I hadn't thought about it in years, but yeah, she'd always have a little as a digestive, and it's strong. I think I once tasted it when I was like 13 and was like, Grandma,
I was going to say, how lethal is it? Is it?
It's very potent, yeah. So it's used as a digestif, and I think that's just because if you've overeaten, you'll have sort of a shot of that, and you won't remember what you've eaten, so you'll feel better.
You'll be absolutely fine with the meal, whatever you have. That's brilliant. Well, thanks for kind of giving us that whistle-stop tour of Lyon. We and the surrounding areas too. We're now going to move on to just talking a little bit about the present and the future of Lyon. Whether you want to visit Fairy Tale Chateau, stroll amongst rolling fields of blossoming lavender, or learn about what makes a noble vintage, our DK Witness France travel guide will make sure you experience all that France has to offer. Our newly updated guide brings the country to life, transporting you there like no other travel guide does, with expert-led insights, trusted travel advice, and detailed breakdowns of the must-see sites. Find it in all good bookshops or via the link in our episode bio.
So Anna, tell us, obviously we're sort of coming out of a pandemic, or we're in the midst of a pandemic, but everyone's acting like there is no pandemic. How has Lyon changed in recent times?
So I suppose it's a little bit difficult for me to say. So I mean, the first time that I went to Lyon was kind of 9 years ago. So I did kind of know it in a pre-pandemic world, but I only moved here 9 months ago. So I wasn't in Lyon for kind of the first 2 lockdowns. We did have, I would say it was a very kind of light lockdown around about Christmas time when the borders between France and the UK were closed. And I'd say the French were a lot hotter on mask wearing. But at the same time, the French are known for being pretty big on their protests, and I think that by the time kind of a third lockdown came around, nobody was really having any of it, and all rules got scrapped in Lyon probably about a month ago when the elections happened, with all the candidates just trying to boost their popularity. So it's difficult for me to say if anything's kind of changed permanently in Lyon as a result of the pandemic, because obviously I wasn't living here before the pandemic. I get the impression that probably not. I think that everything's kind of returned to the way it always was. I mean, there's a massive music festival happening this weekend. It seems, everything seems to have kind of returned to normal, I guess.
How is it for you in terms of actually moving to a whole new city? Like, it's inside the pandemic in a way. I know it's not necessarily a new city for you, but that must have been quite strange. And do you feel like you were welcomed with open arms a bit, or?
So I suppose when I moved in September, I really optimistically thought, okay, well, it's all done. France isn't that far. There'll be no more lockdowns. And I was actually back in the UK sorting my visa when France closed the border to all Brits. And yeah, it was sort of a little bit panicky because I'd left everything in France, my car, my bike, all of my belongings. I just started to establish my life there. And then I really panicked that I was going to get stuck. But actually, it was just a case of spending far too much money on 1,000,001 COVID tests and probably getting everyone rubbish Christmas presents as a result. So yeah, I mean, it was a funny time to move, and I think that I obviously naively thought that everything was just kind of going back to normal. I think I was welcomed with open arms. I think that the thing is because everyone's been so stuck for such a long time. And we've probably just had, kind of a lot less to talk about, and our social circles have probably been really narrowed and stuff, that I feel like everything's kind of new and exciting. So I was really excited to meet a bunch of new people. I hope they were excited to meet me.
I'm sure they were. Of course they were.
Fingers crossed. And then as kind of the borders started opening again, I found that I had a lot of people really keen to come out and visit as well. It became almost a bit of a timetabling job, like when people were going to come out, because it got sort of really exciting, like, oh, we have a friend that doesn't live in London or in Cornwall. Like, this is great, let's go. But yeah, it's been very welcoming. Definitely.
It's brilliant to hear that your friends are getting out and visiting you and stuff as well. And have you actually seen the visitor numbers picking up in the city over the last couple of weeks?
So the time that I really noticed the visitor numbers going up was when the borders with the UK opened again, which I think was in about March time. On the ski slopes.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so we've been going out this little bus trips that go out from Lyon for a day, just to take you out to kind of a nearby ski resort, and you get up at stupid o'clock and you go and ski for the day, and then you roll onto the bus back to Lyon in the evening. And to start off with, you would not hear a word of English spoken. Everyone knew how to ski really well, and I only started learning this year, so I felt like an absolute idiot just tumbling over my skis the whole time. And yeah, it was quite quiet, and literally instantly, as soon as the borders opened, I remember going on one of these little ski bus trips out to I think it was somewhere that's fairly popular with Brits as well. And all of a sudden, I was in the ski lift and I didn't hear a word of French spoken. It was just, it was like being in mini London. And then you got onto the slopes, and I saw a load of people that had clearly never skied before, tumbling over their skis and everything. And I felt a bit of solidarity as well. It was quite nice to see a few other people who didn't really know what they were doing, but at the same time it was really strange going somewhere that's so close to where I live and just hearing British accents.
Yeah, I can totally see that. So if you so for those people who are kind of keen to go back to Lyon to actually go visit, when is the best time to visit? Is it the ski season, or is there a lot to look forward to over the summer too?
I mean, being a massive city that's so close to a lot of different areas, you can definitely go at any time of year. But for being actually in Lyon sort of city centre, I'd probably say spring or autumn, actually, because the seasons are fairly extreme here. So winter was absolutely icy. The summer, I mean, apparently it frequently gets up to about 40 degrees, and already late May, we're regularly kind of into the early 30s, and then there'll be a massive storm, and it's still pretty hot at night. So to avoid temperature extremes, yeah, spring and autumn are really good. But then there's quite a lot of cool festivals that you can go to in the summer. So summer's definitely really good from kind of the live music perspective. But then again, in the winter, you've got a really amazing lights festival called Fête des Lumières, which I think is one of the largest, if not the largest, in Europe, where basically you have several days of enormous, great lights installations and shows, and mulled wine stands in the street and live music and everything. And that's at the start of December, and that's a lot of good fun. Yeah. Really good fun.
That sounds
I have
fun,
heard of that
say.
before. It does sound really, quite immersive. And yeah, I think on the music festival side, it's quite a famous jazz festival in Lyon.
Yeah, there is. So that one is, I believe that's at Fourvière. There's so many festivals happening this summer, so it's difficult to keep track of the really big ones. There's definitely a famous jazz festival, and I think that's up at Fourvière in the old kind of Roman amphitheatre up on the hill. And then you've also got this weekend's Nuit Sonore, which is a huge electro festival, and Nuit de Fourvière goes on for about a month, and that's kind of a whole variety of different types of music, but again, all right up on the hill, kind of in the old amphitheatre, which is by Fourvière. And there's probably lots of music festivals that I don't even know about yet that are happening. It seems to be like a continual run of them.
I love the idea of a festival in an amphitheatre. That sounds incredible.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But all that sounds amazing, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us to take us through kind of how Lyon is at present. Some of the best things to do as well. It's been a joy to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's been fantastic to be on the podcast.
So a huge thank you to Anna. That was fantastic.
It was such a lovely whistle-stop tour. I felt like she really ticked so many boxes for us.
I know, yeah. Like it was, I don't think I've ever known a guest to be so efficient with their recommendations as well. I can't, but I'm still getting over the fact that she got the just one thing round with only mentioning one thing. Yeah. For shame, other guests. I'm joking.
Top
I'm
marks,
joking.
Anna.
We love you. Full marks, Anna, for sure. So you can find, if you want to follow Anna's activities, her new life in Lyon, you can follow her on Twitter at Anna Richards. So where are we going next, Lucy?
Oh, I'm really, really looking forward to the next episode. So we're actually going to Dubai in the company of Hayley Alexander, who's going to give us a different perspective of Dubai. So it should be a really interesting episode, I think.
Yeah.
I think she's going to bust some myths about Dubai.
Yeah, because I think everyone thinks of Dubai, thinks of the super rich, thinks of extravagant versions of wealth, whereas actually there are many people who live, work in the city, who visit as well. And actually I know Hayley's written before about lots of the different sides of Dubai, what you can actually see there, the kind of melting pot that it is. So
that's it. And like Anna, she's hugely passionate about the city that she lives in, so she's going to be a brilliant guest.
Yes, well, you can join us in a fortnight, listener, to hear all of Hayley's recommendations, but otherwise it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Thank you, and we shall see you very soon.
Where to Go was produced by the team at DK Eyewitness and the wonderful Julia Baker. It was presented by James Atkinson and Lucy Richards and mastered by Johnny Coddington at Bottle Rocket Recording. For more information about DK Eyewitness, follow us on social media at DK Eyewitness or visit dk.com/eyewitness.
And don't forget to please like, rate, review and subscribe the show wherever you get your podcast. Your support means so much to us.